Om mano nabudi nashariram indriyam tanmatram bhutani nabhuta panchakam. Aham kritas chapi vyatswarupakam tamisham atmanam upuiti shashvatam. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi. That one attains to the supreme Brahman, who dissolves mind, intellect, the 10 senses, the 5 elements, the body, the vital forces, along with the ego, into the Atman, and who perceives the identity of the Atman with Brahman. Brahman is the soul in all. Those who meditate upon Brahman become Brahman. They become fitted for the Brahman state. Therefore, may Brahman sustain us, may Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, the world, with the studies, and may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. We are presently in the second of 3 class series, which, if you want the abbreviated version, is just the 3 O's. We're talking about the mind, which is very important. And the 3 O's mean, is the mind going to be obsessed? Is it going to be just ordinary? Or is it going to be the original mind, which Sri Ramakrishna called Brahman, pure mind? Pure mind is Brahman, or Buddha mind is Brahman. These great beings know that the mind itself is, as Sri Ramakrishna said, the gateway to heaven and simultaneously the doorway to hell. So it can go either direction. And we must say, in addition to that saying of his, that it can also transcend both heaven and hell and go into a transcendent state. So that's what we're speaking about in terms of the original mind. And last week I told you that we want to look at these 3, not one per week, as I did the previous series on Naham, Kaham, and Saham, if you remember. But we wanted to mix them up and go in and out of them, so that maybe one class won't just be all such bad news, and one class be sort of moderate, and then another class be all bright and shiny with teachings only on the original mind, because the mind itself fluctuates back and forth. It's not like people need to become obsessed all the time. When the gunas change, as we saw last week with that chart on how mind reaches transformation, which we'll look at today in terms of one of the great aids called mantra. When it reaches that state of transformation and it knows it can change itself, then it rises out of darkness, which we'd be calling obsessed mind. There are worse minds than obsessed mind, as you might imagine. And then it can rise with rajas in its favor to ordinary mind and do what everyone's doing. They're just running around working, making money, gathering sustenance, and then maybe resting a little bit. And when you come to a sattvic state, it's not just rest, but it's balance, because people can rest their bodies, rest maybe even the thinking process of their mind, and still have rather dull minds, or rather restless minds. That's the habitual mind again, the obsessed mind. So I wanted to look at that today in terms of Patanjali's teachings, the 5 states of mind, and then there's 7 ways in which Patanjali, again, the father of yoga, has given us to try and rise above 3 of those states of mind, which he called dull, fragmented, and a combination of both, sometimes restless, sometimes balanced. So we looked at that chart last week that had the color coding on it, with tamas being black, and then Rajatamas being brown, Rajas being red, and then Rajasattva being yellow, and then Sattva being white. When we got to the top of the chart, and if you'll look in your Footfalls copy and look up these charts and studying them post-class, you'll see that there's also what Shankara talked about in terms of pure sattva. And that's the mind we want to gain, which is more towards the original mind. Yeah, it may still be thinking because it's gleaning a lot of exquisite enjoyment out of the scriptures that it reads. And it's meditating in a non-dual state and beginning to have superlative visions of the absolute, both in form and formless. That is, the highest forms become available to it, as Sri Ramakrishna testified when he had all these visions of the different deities when he concentrated on them. So concentration, of course, would be one of the key elements. That's dharana in yoga. And we want to make sure the mind can focus and remain steady in what it concentrates upon. So 3 types of mind this week, then we'll look at it in terms of some way to keep the mind from becoming obsessed and at the same time not settle for just an ordinary state of mind. Maybe when we were growing up, we saw people all around us with an ordinary state of mind, our parents, our siblings, our teachers at school, other people, neighbors, and so forth. They weren't doing anything extraordinary necessarily. So we then began to hear about these great souls that are the saints of Western religion and the seers of Eastern religion and the non-dualists of India, and how they will treat their minds and how they will hone their intellects. That's mano, buddhi, and then how they will elevate their thoughts, chitta, and how with all of that in hand, they will diminish the effect of the ego, the ahamkara, on the whole subtle body, sharira. So that's what I just chanted, right? Om mano buddhi ahamkara sharira tanmatram bhutani nabhuta panchakan. Throw the indriyas in there too, the 5 senses. So Shankara is looking at the whole package, the whole psychophysical being, and saying, no, this is how you dissolve that. I was mentioning, I think yesterday at satsang, that I was meditating on another sloka of Shankara's where he said, the stone, the tree, leaves, earth, rice, husk, all become one substance when they're burnt, called ashes. Just like that, he says, mind, intellect, ego, body, senses, vital forces, when burnt in the fire of knowledge, they also become one substance. It's called Brahman. So the practitioner of blissful dissolution then looks towards turning this ordinary mind away from its preoccupation with mundane things, with social conventions, with mundane religious practices and rituals, because most of the people we were growing up with when we grew up were involved in these kinds of practices, if they were practices at all. Maybe they were just attending upon religion. Maybe they were just going to school, as Sri Ramakrishna said, and using this mother wisdom to make a mere living, which he decided to quit school when that happened to him. He didn't want to use this precious mother wisdom for anything short of realizing Brahman, which for that he's going to need this chit shuddhi. He's going to need these pure thoughts and this pure mind and this honed intellect and this diminished ego. If you can put those 4 together, the antaha karna, the fourfold package and work on each of those, you might say that's a great qualification to have to then realize the 4 yogas. Because you can easily put the 4 yogas side by side with each of those 4 elements of the subtle body. So with this, my preamble to the second class, we want to look at one way in which the seers maintain their yogic balance. That is, they're not going to fall into any kind of obsession with anything or anyone. That yogic balance is precious to them. So obsessed mind, they find it hard to teach it or to even mention it. If you go to a satsang or go to holy company and there's an illumined soul there, or a soul that's lit up or enlightened, then you'll hardly hear them mentioning these things, because to them they're false, they're unreal, they're mitchigan, they don't really exist. To bring them, talk about them, bring them up, helps them to gain a footing in the mind, in that very mind that has a tendency towards obsession. Rainwater falls to the lowest place, Ramakrishna said. If you leave your mind untended, then it's going to fall to the lowest place. Shankar's version of that is, if you don't recite the scriptures daily in a monastery, that rusts. That's the rust of monasteries. And if you don't do your practice with your wife and husband and children and your in-laws who are living with you in the household, well, that's the rust of households. So whether it's rust and corrosion or whether it's water falling to the lowest place, these beings are thinking with their original minds when they think at all. So their thoughts are very high. I'll show you that when I show you the 7 levels mastery of mind, or 7 venues in which you can master the mind. So all of this we want to get to, yes, today in our little old Dharmic hour here. And so let's start with this teaching on mantra, because that's what I'm trying to usher in here. The fact that they'll come here armed with the scriptures, non-dual teachings, and the mantra. So these are forms of words. Words, as I can attest to, especially later in my life, if you start to hear them, or even if you start to speak them, can lead you into samadhi. So all of a sudden, they'll feel the mind going into a non-dual state, and your tongue will stop flapping, and your lips will stop moving, and your senses will become indrawn just by the power of these beautiful slokas or sutras or suras that you're studying and meditating in your particular religious tradition. So the power of words, very important. So overall, a universal practice for keeping the mind towards its original state and away from just ordinariness, and definitely free of obsession or evil thinking, mean-mindedness, which there's a lot of that around, is this mantra. So let's look at this transformation of mind in mantra practice. There you see at the very top of the chart on either end, so I'll lead you through this rather quickly, is on one side tattva gyan, on the other side upasana jnana. So tattva gyan is knowledge of principles. Like what? Like the 5 elements, how they connect to the 5 senses, how through the flow of the 5 pranas, those connect to the subtle body, how that all connects to the mind, how the mind connects to the intellect and intelligence, and how that connects to your ego at that time becoming ripe, thank you very much, and how that connects then to your Atman and how you perceive that as one with Brahman. That's principles. Those are tattvas of a major kind. And they're either truth principles, wisdom principles, or tattvas can become something that are just very minimal, like the 5 elements. So biologists are studying the 5 elements. So they're studying tattvas according to Sanskrit. And there's little secrets in each of them. Water flows, fire burns, matter has atoms in it. So all of this is a kind of a matter of awe and wonder. They get sucked into these tattvas. So anyway, I'm just saying tattva gyan, when you put gyan after the word, means truth principles or wisdom principles. These are much more powerful, and they're going to help this mind, the barometer of this mind, the needle of this mind, away from obsession into its ordinary state, and then away from ordinary state into back towards original mind. So pretty soon you have pundits, scholars, intellectuals. We were saying this yesterday at satsang. One ray of wisdom from the Divine Mother of the Universe stuns 1,000 scholars, as Sri Ramakrishna said. So this is the power of words and thoughts. Words and thoughts are really one thing. And when they reach a high place like that, they have the power to transform the mind. So let's see, there's ordinary mind right there in the middle for us. So we don't have to do much searching for that. We're just starting out with ordinary minds. Like most people are born in this day and age in the West with, let's call it, ordinary mind. And they're just seeking money and wealth and their things in nature. They're not trying to, say, transcend, get beyond nature. And as they study nature, they get pulled more into nature. That's called prakriti, by the way, in Sanskrit. But the ordinary mind, as you can see as we go down the chart, takes to mantra practice, like Om Mani Padme Hum or Om Namah Shivaya, or any of these beautiful mantras, some of them which are more readily known abroad to a broader mass of humanity, and some which are still very hidden and a matter of guru-disciple relationship. If you start practicing this mantra, then the first, on either side of that chart again, is it usually comes with either right away or in time with diksha, called mantra diksha. You're getting initiated into the path. You're getting initiation. So this is called mantra diksha in Sanskrit, and it's the result of good karmas through many lifetimes. You could probably say it simply like that. And so you arrive at this point in your life where you found a guru and the scriptures and the guidance. That's on the other side of this mantra practice. So you can see there, in my own case, yes, I found the Shastras first, then I found my guru next, then I got initiated, and the guidance was ongoing. So it doesn't have to happen in any particular order. It's different for different people depending on their needs and their seeking and the intensity of how they're attracted to God with form or even formless reality, because there are some very powerful words that have to do with non-duality too, like, say, tattvamasi or aham brahmasmi. This self is Brahman. So these great mahavakyas, great sayings, start to erase the line of demarcation between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul, and between the Supreme Soul and Brahman. Supreme Soul here meaning Ishvara. So these are ways of moving inward. When you say the mantra, the ears hear it, and there are nerves there leading to the brain. But beyond that, what you're hearing, there are subtle nadis, and the words are getting in there as power, and they're running through subtle nadis into the mind. So this is all step in, or what we like to call involution process. And you have to have faith that the mantra is going to do its work and practice it. It can't be thief in the night kind of initiation where you get a mantra and then it happened to me even recently. You get a mantra and a couple of weeks later, oh, I'm out of here. I'm going to go for another mantra to someone else. So this is this kind of menu tasting or the way people are looking for a quick fix. But if you have a good path, a good teacher, and you've gotten an authentic mantra, then that's the time when you have to hunker down and practice that better seen when I show you these next charts, how to get rid of distracted mind and get beyond restless mind, or what we're calling obsessed and ordinary mind. All of a sudden you'll feel the difference in yourself when you commit. Without the committal, then that's wandering mind you're talking about there. You have not connected your waking state with your dreaming state, with your deep sleep state. the A with the U with the M, Om. You haven't connected those yet. And so the rishis say, well, they're just wandering throughout the three worlds, basically now. They just have A. Maybe they're rich or happy on earth, but they have nothing afterwards. They haven't stored up their treasures in heaven, as Jesus said. So they haven't connected what they got here with where it came from inside of them. And so they're left in the lurch this way. And that's called, again, rebirth or transmigration. I said transformation, not transmigration. You want to have this great presence of the Lord come to you as your own self. Adihi sasam yoga namitte hetu. You know the beautiful sloka from Svetashvatara is that you meditate upon the Lord seated in your heart as your own self. Better to start off that way than imagine it being up in the sky somewhere on a cloud or in some other world that has no connection whatsoever with you. All these worlds are within you, the Lord is within you, and thou art that. There's one of those great Mahavakyas. So some things about what happens first when you subject the ordinary mind to mantra practice. Isn't this a beautiful chart to go through for this particular subject? Now, what happens next is you must repeat it. Nidrabhanga. It must be repeated. That's the point of it. So you can't say, oh, it's just saying the same thing over and over again. It's always been funny to me how people picked up on kirtan in the West. See, I was like seeing bhajans and stotrams when I was out on the road sharing the Indian Dharma with the Western nations and in India and so forth. I was doing, singing songs that had meaning and so forth, but pretty soon I saw people coming forth, they got attracted to kirtan. So they'll say one phrase over and over again and dance and sing that and repeat it. They don't mind doing that. But when it comes to have to sit down quietly and do what the guru has told you to do by concentrating on the mantra and repeating that many times, well, that gets boring, you see. But that's the inward track towards transformation. That other is the outward track towards transmigration. So the body is not going to get you enlightenment. Shall I repeat it again? You'll never get enlightenment through the body and the senses. Enlightenment is of the mind only. And when you take the mind and put it in its original state, that is enlightenment. So why did the mind fall out away from that pure source that it's identical with, the original mind? So this is what we have to drum into our minds when we take up a mantra. So, because you see next to it there is concentration, mantrartha bhavana. You have to repeat it with concentration. The parrot says the mantra, the parrot in Hindu households says the mantra many times a day, but it never gets enlightened. And when a cat gets it, it doesn't say the mantra, it squawks in death. So the kind of repetition that it's doing is not going to go deep into its mind or its tiny little brain, but the human being has a vast repository of mind, thought, intelligence, and potential personality, like true personality within it, presence. So it's going to have to repeat what the guru told it to give, told the soul to give, and repeat it with concentration. I was saying it yesterday in satsang. 7 seconds of pure concentration is a kind of samadhi, says the father of yoga. So it's very hard to have 7 seconds without a thought. You see, to leave the mind completely free of thought. But if you can do that and then get that under control, then 14 seconds, 21 seconds, you know the drill. Pretty soon you're having a minute or two of silence. How blissful it is. But you have to study the snow conditions like an Eskimo. That silence is not the emptiness that, say, Buddhism is talking about, like shunyata. That's the precursor to it. You have to study it and then see these divine forms come out of it and then see the light behind them. So it's all an involution. It's an inward ascension that you're looking for here. And there's vitalization. See, so if you repeat with concentration and it begins to lose its power, then you have to revitalize it all the time. That's called mantra chaitanya. It comes straight out of consciousness, out of awareness. And that's where the guru got it from, and the guru's guru got it from, and so forth, back in a line of succession to the great souls who first came up with these beautiful, powerful syllables of mother wisdom. Now you can see here that on either side, as we go down the middle, vidanena mantra chacharanam. That is, you can utter the mantra in three ways: audibly, mutter it, or silent. I'm sure many of you have seen Buddhist monks around the world. Their lips are moving, or maybe some Vaishnavas, their lips are moving, and their japa is like in a bag and you can't see it, their beads. So they have this practice of being half in the world and half in the mantra. So they're muttering it all the time. That's called upamshu. So Vaichika is audible, and that's the least effective to do it audibly. Sometimes you'll need to do that. But the most effective is manasa japa. You do it with the mind, manas. And that's silent always. So those three ways, you can use them at different times of mantra phases, but they'll become very helpful to you. But the beautiful thing now happens is that it's called bodha manaha. You can see there that the ordinary mind is approaching closer and closer to Vakdevi. If you look just above the place we just left on the chart, you can see on the left-hand side, there's an external quarter part of the mantra called Vaikari. It's also one of the lowest phase of the word, it's called, where everything's vibrating very densely. Look across the paper and the chart, and you can see there's Tripura Sundari listed. That's the hidden 3/4 of the mantra. That's a name for Divine Mother. She's hidden inside of you. And the mantra is then, whether you know it or not, or many people maybe haven't got this teaching in their tradition or their lineage or from their gurus, is that that's really what you're headed toward, is the Vakdevi. She's the mother of the word. The intelligence in the word is what she put there. And you want to awaken that in the way that mantra does, in a traditional fashion, and empower it like vitalization. And so as you move in, then you're going to encounter her in 4 phases. First the outer phase, and then the inner phase called madhyama, and then the next phase is called the third phase of the word, pashanti, and then pretty soon you'll come to the ultimate stage of the word called para, supreme. So para, pashanti, madhyama, and vaikari, only reversed, starting out with the sound of the word outwards as you say it out loud, and then you mutter it, and that goes in, and all of a sudden you see that it's got its source in a deeper level, where another aspect of mother is showing itself up to you. You go even deeper than that over time, and you're doing it silently, and then there's not encumbered by anything extraneous. It's as if mother is coming rushing to you. Yes? What did you say, my child? Are you calling me? Sri Ramakrishna used to say that about the little boy getting tired of his red toy. See, she'll leave him playing with it, but when he gets tired of it, throw it away and cry out, Ma, Ma, and he doesn't want anything at that time other than his mother, so she comes rushing out of the kitchen and takes him in her arms. So this is an analogy he's using to describe how we get closer and closer to the most beautiful one, Tripura Sundari, the mother that's inside of you in 3 different cities, Pura. So you're moving towards her, and so you can understand that this is not a fantasy, this is not imagination. It starts out with visualization, and it becomes realization. So you have to hold this in truth. This is why this chart is set up in such a way that's empowering you. It's helping you to repeat. It's encouraging you to concentrate, and it's asking you to vitalize your practice every day. And so you'll arrive there at the Vak Devi, and you see there people who have these great beings that we were talking about, who possess original mind. The rishis on the left, the yogis on the right, the saints on the left, the sages on the right, the Mahatmas on the left, great souls, the Siddhas, the perfected ones on the right, and the Paramahamsa there in the middle, like our Sri Ramakrishna. All of this, very important. And this is going to give you what they have, Bodha Manaha. That's illumined mind. It's even sung about, you've heard it before. Mono Boli Bajukali Icha Hoi Torjaya Chari Guru Data Mohamantra Ivanishi Japa Kori Mono Boli Bajukali Icha Hoi Torjaya Chari Guru Data Mohamantra Ivanishi Japa Kori Mono Boli Bajukali. And then on with this beautiful song by Ramprasad Sen, the poet, sage, and saint of India. And he says, in this fashion, O playful mind, meditate on the mystery of Kali, using any method of worship you please, or simply breathe day and night her holy name as the living seed of transforming power, planted by the Guru in your heart. So this is one of the verses I sang, and the song asks you to then take all sounds you hear as natural mantras, and all food you eat as offering to her, and every place you roam about this earth, think about that as her territory. Just like Tripura Sundari, you're moving inwards and inwards and inwards. So it's not just an ordinary mind or an ordinary world leaning towards obsession with life, fear of death, but it's this revelation and this joy and this bliss of knowing that objects and words go together, and they've come out of each other, and all of those two have come out of you. And when you speak them and share them with others, with your children and with your parents, if they haven't learned it yet, then you're always tending towards this original mind. And that's shining with its own light, like the sun shines with its light. It's Svayam Jyoti, its inner light. So this is Bodhi mind, or Bodha Manaha. It's the same in all Indian traditions. It sounds even Buddhist, but this is practice of the mantra and how important it is. And just so you know that there's a kind of mantra that's going on all the time. You can see here, it's called a japa mantra. It's a spontaneous flow of divine name. So like in our own case with our founder, Lex Hickson, and he started out doing the mantra given to him by Swami Nikhilananda in New York. And we saw him through the years, through decades, actually use this mantra and go further and further deep inside with it, until pretty soon he was describing it as kind of a spring of bubbling ambrosia coming up inside of him. First, it was kind of a projection against the world, because the world doesn't want you to get enlightened and leave them behind in the suffering. So it's beginning to have its effect on you, and then pretty soon it's more than a protection. It's like the precursor to inner vision. So you'll see Mother inside of you, and you'll see her as occupying all forms. Like here, consider lying down to sleep as offering to her. Allow your dreams to become radiant meditations. As you wander the countryside, feel that you are moving through her. She constitutes the letters of every alphabet, and each letter secretly bears the flower of her name. The singer of this song is overwhelmed and cries, "Wonderful, wonderful." Whatever food or drink you receive, offer it with love and devotion into the Vakdevi, into the mother of all of the universe. So he sings on and on like that in a state of ecstasy. So Hamsa mantra, Hamsa. People breathe in and then breathe out 21,600 times a day. And that, of course, is less at night because you go into a breathless state called deep sleep, a kind of kumbhaka. And in this spontaneous flow, there's what's called anusandana, mental search of awareness for its intrinsic value. I was trying to explain that when we started this chart, is you have to examine the ground of your consciousness. Be willing to sit there when the thoughts go away and see where the thoughts rose from. You can't just say, "Oh, thoughts are gone now," and you give up and walk away. But your awareness was stripped naked there right before you. And all the problems that are called thoughts, that are of ordinary kind or obsessed kind, were all of a sudden gone, and you didn't say where they came from, how they grew, what caused them to grow, and what made them go away. So I don't know how else to say it. It's a hard thing to say, but I would say that most people who have a built-in and spontaneous desire to meditate when they're young, they understand this. They know that it's a mental search of their own awareness. And because awareness has this intrinsic value. Then pana, anapana, inhalation and exhalation, you must equalize them. Then Kundalini Shakti arises. She gets aroused and rises. That would be another way of saying Tripura Sundari is becoming available to you as you move in with the mantra. Then Anahata, wondrous sounds are detected, but must be overcome to concentrate on the primal sound of Om. The Upanishads describe that. I heard the tinkling of bells, and I heard the huge symphony of kettle drums booming, like hearing an ocean breaking in the distance and getting closer to it. Or first I saw smoke, then I saw fireflies in the darkness. So whether it's to hear or to see, as you move inside, the mantra begins to break up the darkness of ignorance and the veils that are over the inner senses, because you're moving from the outer senses to the inner senses. So these wondrous sounds you detected at first, and these sights that you see, they need to be subjected to their ground of consciousness. When they're past, then you see or hear the Anahata Dvani, or the Shabda Brahman, the sound Brahman, or the word. Then Shuddha Chaitanya means the thoughts begin to dissolve into pure mind. So you're there. Om transforms into conscious light called Jyoti, and the great statement, I am, Aham, dawns, or Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman. The Paramahamsa says here, mantra is that, the contemplation of which yields special knowledge of the universe, revealing it to be non-distinct from Brahman. In other words, the universe is full of Brahman. So this was Sri Ramakrishna's own experience. And we know if you look through the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, then you look in the glossary, or you can look in the concordance, and you see all these entries under Om and what he experienced when he first heard that word and aligned himself with it, moved inside towards it. So the mantras usually begin with that word called Om. Good, then let's look at Something that's more of a cautionary teaching. It does describe ordinary mind. This is a teaching of the father of yoga about the 5 states of the mind field in yoga. When the father of Vedanta commented on the father of yoga's system, he said, like seeds fallen even briefly into the fire, thus losing their generative power, the first 3 states of the mind field are worthless for gaining samadhi. They are scarcely worthy of detailed mention and are not fit to be included in the category of yoga, since yoga is samadhi. So you can see what a high level they're holding both the word yoga and the experience of samadhi at. And we're going to have to say that this critique on the 3 lower stages of mind should be rather simple and rather easy to understand. So let's look then at the first one, kshipta, or disturbed mind. You can see the sine wave there. It's jagged. While we're there, let's look at the sine wave for the other 4 states. Muda, lethargic, is a valley, constantly in and out of valleys. Vikshipta is sometimes raised and sometimes lowered. So sometimes you're up on a hill, sometimes you're down in a valley. Ekagra flattens out completely. And Niruddha is gone most of the time. That is, sometimes you're aware of the ego, and other times you're merged completely in Brahman, and then it changes back. You're aware of the world again. It's very much indicative of how Sri Ramakrishna, his samadhi happened to him. Consciousness was withdrawn, and he'd be gone even while he was speaking, because I said the power of words are very convincing in revealing the presence of the Divine Mother Wisdom inside of you, and even revealing her herself. So as everything goes back in, then his mind disappeared. That's why he used to say, the further you go towards Brahman, the further away you go from the world. And then when you come back out to the world of senses and vital forces and bodies and matter, then the further that samadhi goes away. So with him saying something like that, probably be good time for you to give up the idea that you can have your cake and eat it too. The only way you can have that is to realize Brahman, come back to the earth and try and see it all here. But when that happens, you're not falling a victim to the ignorance that objects are Brahman. You're seeing that what exists behind them is Brahman. Their substratum, their foundation is Brahman, not the thing itself. So you could see kshipta mind is disturbed. He gives us that first state of mind. And continually agitated, completely unsteady, and dominated by rajas. So there's a lot of restlessness going on there. Lost among objects, average waking state of a normal person, that almost puts it into the category of ordinary mind. So that's why when I say obsessed mind and ordinary mind, that there can be a change from tamas to rajas and rajas back to tamas. So that's why I'm trying to base these 3 classes and these 3 states on the fact that you don't need to get stuck in one particular type of mind, although there are people that do get stuck in them. There are a lot of people who are just live an ordinary life with an ordinary mind, and they're not seeking even lower knowledge that much. And then, of course, there are people who have become very obsessed with intoxicants, say, or things like that are damaging to the state of yoga. Like he said here, they're not even worth mentioning because they go against the state. They're not fit to be included in yogic practice. So therefore, intoxicants have to go. For instance, that would be a teaching for some people in the West. If you want to get into true yoga and have true samadhi. So the average waking state of a normal person is being called here rather disturbed. So you can see the father of yoga has a stark criticism about that. On the other hand, people go into tamas. That's called muda, or lethargic. It's a state of dull stupor, steeped in stagnation and dominated by darkness or tamas. As in states such as comatose, inebriation, drug affliction, etc. So it's very unnaturally to the state to fall into, to the mind, to fall into those kinds of states. And could have probably thrown depression in there at the same time, but they're usually problems and causes for that depression that people fall into. The overall description of it in Vedanta and yoga would be under the regime of tamas or darkness. So therefore, you'd be trying to get yourself animated by getting active. That's how most people work it. So they can come out of a kind of obsessed torpor state of mind and get into a restless, I think I'm making headway kind of mind. But they have two other states of mind still to come, which are sattvic and pure sattvic. There's also a third state of mind called no mind. So in the meantime, most people are going through this vikshipta state called distracted. You can see there it experiences balance, then it gets stripped of balance, and it's drawn away from balance by habit. So there's where vikshipta falls victim to the potential for obsessed mind. So all three of these minds going back and forth between tamas, rajas, and a combination thereof, this would be pretty much the state of the ordinary mind falling into obsession, getting itself back out of obsession, and then not learning its lesson and just continuing to do ordinary things with no defenses up against it. Oh, this is called what Sri Ramakrishna called worldliness when he was in the body in 1800s. Worldliness has become a chronic disease, he said. So he looked at people there in India in the 1800s, and people whose great souls and ancestors could be traced all the way back to great souls like Krishna and Ram and Vishishta and others, and the seven great rishis and the Trinity, looking at people there in this day and age falling victim to these three states of mind, and almost inexplicably. So it gives rise to these 9 vikshepas. I didn't bring that chart for you, but I think you've seen it before. They're also called antarayas, such as disease, doubt, and one of our favorite, Bhranti Darshana, this actually philosophical misunderstanding, is one of those 9 vikshepas too. So you even see it's like similar to the word vikshipta. So these are Patanjali's reading. You know that he's giving you the 5 kleshas: attachment, ignorance, aversion, clinging to life, and egotism. So those 5 kleshas are coming forth from the teaching of yoga, the 8-limbed yoga. Now he's on top of that, he gave you these more personalized antarayas, or impediments, they're called, which are 9. So you can look in the Footfalls book and look up those 9 antarayas. There's a chart just about them with copious explanation on all of them. So these 3, Vedavyasa, the father of Vedanta, said, let's get these behind us. These aren't worthy of yoga. They will never get you samadhi. That is, you'll never get into samadhi as long as these are there. Even if these 3 go away, they become a habit. So if you did get into samadhi while they were gone, like, when the cat's away, the mice will play fashion, then all of a sudden they'll come back on you and ruin your samadhi. So this is why you want to look towards these 4th and 5th states of mind. And the one that probably aligns itself best, I'd say, with original mind would be ekagra, because the mind is being used by these great souls remember the chart, the saints, the seers, the siddhas, the yogis, the paramahamsas, the Buddhas, they're all in this state of bodhamanaha, and they come to this world in that state. So Buddha named himself after that. I am the awakened intelligence. You might as well have just said it in English. You might call me anything you want, but what I am is awakened intelligence. So living intelligence is how Swami Vivekananda was to say that later. And so it really means you're getting into a non-dual state of mind. That's later, Niruddha. So ekagra, it's according to the great yogi Patanjali, sampragyata, it's a kind of seated samadhi state. It illumines all wisdom that's within you. So that's a beautiful saying, because you're to think then, by the teachings of yoga and Vedanta, that all wisdom lies within you. There are 7 laws, for instance, to yoga, and seven higher truths in Vedanta. Each one of those, amongst each of those lists of 7, there's that law that all wisdom lies within you. All knowledge lies within you. So that's that ground of consciousness, right? That when the snow melted or when thoughts went away, you didn't stay around to look, to see what was there once they went away. You just went off and said, I mastered my mind. You see, my thoughts are now, I'm now a master of my thoughts. Manaraja, very good for you. But how about the attributes and qualities that make up your consciousness? Do you know them yet? So you're going to have to dive deeper into that and examine that. What did we just say and how important that is, to examine the mind for its intrinsic value. It's a very beautiful saying there, Anusanjana, mental search of your own awareness to find its intrinsic value. So this is what we've come back on from this chart to here, is that it illumines all your wisdom when you do that. You're letting Divine Mother Power in to infuse everything that was in your mind. Your business was to get rid of some of the dualities of the mind so the non-duality come through, like Tulsidas likes to sing. Itani vinati raghunandana se dukkhadanva hamara vitauji dukkhadanva hamara ditauji dukkhadanva hamara vitauji dukkhadanva hamara vitauji dukkhadanva hamara vitauji itani vinati ranunandana se. Oh yes, this is my prayer to thee, Raghunanda. So what is that prayer that Tulsidas so devoutly sings out in a beautiful bhajan like this? It's to kindly cause my mind to quit perceiving duality. Because only non-duality exists. It's called the Atman. Only Atman exists. It alone abides. It is attachment to relativity that gives birth to the miseries of life. Dukkha, dvandva. You see, dukkha is suffering, dvandva is two. Because of these twos that are going about in my mind, I'm stuck to relativity called obsessed and ordinary. And original mind never shows itself up to me. Woe is me. See. So singing like that in a very powerful way with devotion and wisdom fused. This is the beauty, the best of India is where bhakti and jnanam get put together like the two wings of a bird. Then you have ekagra mind, you see. It removes all impurities too. So even in one-pointed mind, these impurities are still lurking. So another thing you examined the ground of your mind for in your meditation after thoughts went away was the origin of where my negative thoughts came from. Those are called samskaras and karmas, at least two words we have for those, and they play off of each other. and the desires are feeding them. The desires for this life are feeding my this life mindset. So coming up all the time on me. They're like poorly digested food. So you remove all impurities. If you were to examine your consciousness and bring the Mother Mantra and point it at that, like a ray gun, you see, towards that alien in your mind, and just zap it, see, just dissolve it. And do that again and again till finally, one day I woke up and my problem was gone, utterly gone. Because nobody can veil the truth. You can't cover a blazing fire with a cloth, with a cotton cloth. It's poof, it goes up. So you have to have that kind of faith based on this chart in your mantra and in your guru who gave it to you, and stick with it. Follow the tradition, as my teacher used to say. It loosens karma's hold. So I've already commented on that. That's this ekagra state of mind, and it leads to full control. It gives pure perception. That's Viveka Khyati, by the way, and both Patanjali and the father of Vedanta, Vedavyas, and the Buddhists too use these terms, Viveka Khyati. It's clarity of, it's not just the discrimination I had to know the difference between the real and the unreal, or the wheat and the chaff. I should have probably known that all along. It was obvious. But I came to know that I had Viveka, but now I need clarity of that. It needs to apply to all levels of my being. And that will be tattva gyan, won't it? Then I will have the knowledge that I need of all things that exist. And then I can get to Niruddha mind. I can go beyond existence and non-existence. Because as we found out in God Blogs yesterday, he who has knowledge also has ignorance. He who has light also has darkness. So he who has existence is also going to be having to come up against non-existence, asat, sat and asat. So you're getting into a very, very high level of dvandva, but it's not causing you dukkha anymore. You're not suffering because of dualities. You're getting inspired by the dualities dissolving away by the mantra and by your own higher consciousness taking over. Ego is receding, divine is coming forward in you. So Niruddha has a very unique description here. It's the asampragata state, according to Father of Yoga. Basically, there are no seeds in it. You don't have to burn the seeds. Back at the ekagra, remember you were still burning seeds because some karma, some subtle karmas are still there. It's a very interesting feature in the attaining of Kaivalya in Patanjali's yoga, is that gunas go away very late, karmas go away very late. But these are not the gunas and karmas that you encountered when you first started your practice. These are very, very subtle versions of them that are cosmic, more than collective and individual. So it gives you full control of your vrittis. Now you can think as you may, or not think as you may or may not. The karmas become fully nullified in the Niruddha state. They don't come dancing back later when you come back into consciousness of the world again. It confers part of vairagya. Now, in vairagya, how many different levels of vairagya are there? Detachment is a good English word for that, or discernment, like viveka. So there are some host of levels of vairagya. But if you reach para vairagya, you've reached what they call tivya vairagya, the supreme level of detachment. It's like mature renunciation, like Sri Ramakrishna had and others, Buddha and Jesus. Then only samskaras of samadhi persist. Wouldn't that be nice, that instead of memories of everything that happened willy-nilly to you through a series of lifetimes, all of a sudden you look in your mind and all I remember is samadhi. All I remember is bliss. All I remember is peace. All I remember is love. All I remember is the highest wisdom. I can't think of anything other than that, you see. This is very beautiful. It's like I never had a mind. I was never invested with a mind that ever had a problem in the first place. That's how it seemed so unreal to me. It just flashed me on the Avadhut's way of saying it. He would sing, Samtapaduka Janako Navidi Kadachi Santapa Yoga Janitam Namanaha Kadachit Yasmadahang Katiriyan Nachame Kadachit Gyanamritam Samarasam Gaganopamoham Gyanamritam Samarasam Gaganopamoham. And I'm tempted just to go on singing and singing and singing these beautiful verses of the Avadhut. But this particular one applies to this idea of Niruddha. Actually, no mind at all, isn't it? And so he sings, contemplating the dreamlike past, I found that I never performed the action that brought about suffering. I never owned a mind complex with which to create pleasure and pain. The ego is an onerous phantom devoid of substance. Thus, considering all this, I concluded that I am really pure existence, wisdom, and bliss, as boundless as the sky and infinite like space. Just one taste of the Avadhut's way of seeing. It also reminds me, although I don't have time to sing them, of these precious verses. I am the fire of living intelligence that consumes the activities of the actionless Atman. I am the fire of non-dual wisdom that removes the sorrows of the sorrowless Atman. I am the non-dual wisdom that dissolves all the bodies of the bodiless Atman. I am pure existence, wisdom, and bliss, as boundless as the sky, infinite like space. I am the fire of non-dual wisdom that eradicates the sins of the sinless Atman. I am the fire of non-dual wisdom that renders extinct the attributes of the attributeless Atman. I am the fire of non-dual wisdom that strikes off the bonds of the unbound Atman. I am pure existence, wisdom, and bliss, as boundless as the sky and infinite like space. So, we're ready to go to a description of the Niruddha, or completely absorbed mind, and to a great soul like that. So you could see, again, as we look down, from disturbed to lethargic to distracted to one-pointed to absorbed. Yes, it might be true that you would put lethargic first and then get disturbed, but I think it's probably makes more sense to get disturbed and then be remorseful that it happened to you. How did I get so disturbed? You see, because in lethargic, you're not going to be thinking anything but how depressed you are. So if you got disturbed in any run of life or walk of life or activity you did or thoughts you had or series of thinking that you did, then you'd probably become lethargic later thinking, boy, how foolish that was. And then you may be able to find a little light in the darkness. That's this distracted mind. Sometimes, well, Sri Ramakrishna described it as a fly. Sometimes it lights on a sweetmeat, other times it lights on filthy things. So it doesn't really have any discrimination at all. It's always going indiscriminately from one thing to another. And that's the mind of many people in this day and age. All right, good. Then we are making good headway in this second class. And I wanted to show you then, to give the final part of this class a real inspirational upward turn. And that would be to show you the 7 methods of mastering of awareness that Patanjali has given us. And whenever I take up yoga as a darshana, that is Patanjali, 8-limb yoga, then I always like to refer to Vedavyas's commentaries on them. And that's the father of Vedanta speaking on the father of yoga's system. Can't get any better than that, as they say in philosophical terms. So you can see then, if you think about these 5 states of mind we just looked at, and prior to that you think about how the mantra takes you from ordinary mind to bodhi mind, and then you could see that those 3 states of mind that were unworthy had to be gotten behind you, and you had to somehow master your thoughts to arrive at ekagra, at least that. Niruddha may happen later, erased mind. And all consciousness will come to you then. It won't be like, oh, I can't think anymore. It's more like what the Avadut just sung. What does he say that? O precious one, I am neither distinct from reality nor brought into union with it. I am not invested with a mind, nor am I devoid of a mind. Don't you see, thought belongs to me, and I am free of it as well. See? That's what we're trying to explain here. That's this inexplicable non-duality or Advaita we're talking about. So if you were able to reach that ekagra state and use it as a position to come down from, like Sri Ramakrishna came down from asampragyata to sampragyata, and then go into the Niruddha state when the mother called you into that, whether at that point probably be beyond mantra practice, it would be just by the ignition of your own living intelligence, like pratibha, spark-like. Just it would fuel, light all the fires in you under all the wisdom that's a part of the ground of your mind. Then you can see that beings are going to have to probably, from the ekagra mind, take a choice of methods. Mantras is almost what you always do in this tradition. Mantra can also be a bubbling spring of ambrosia, remember we said. So it's not like you're going to say, oh, I don't want a mantra because I'm already illumined. Well, I want my share of bliss too. So give me the mantra so when I say it, I can feel Mother Wisdom come bubbling up, illumined or not. So it's something that you always do. But on the way out of vikshipta mind, that is when you've got that sine wave of, oh, sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm depressed, and it keeps going like that, then there's these methods that kick in that you can use. For most people, coming out of ordinary mind, getting into original mind or towards it, the parikarmas would be there, the 4 refinements, because people get very put off the path by other people. And these are bad influences, you see. You need holy company, but this habit of obsessed mind to go towards old habits, poor company. Like all my drinking buddies want to call me out tonight. Long ago you should have given that up. So you float back into this bad habit. See? So given that that's the tendency of the ordinary mind, drifting back towards its old habits, but it also has an aspiration to better itself, then most people on the precipice or the edge of the ordinary mind leading to original mind are going to take up these 4 refinements. Cultivate friendliness towards those who are happy, compassion for sufferers, appreciation for the virtuous, and indifference toward the non-virtuous. When the mind thus becomes pure and purified, it attains stability this way. This is Father of Vedanta's description of the 4 parikarmas given out by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras. If you want the actual sutras for this, look Pada 1, 33 through Pada 1, Sloka Sutras 39. Then another method of mastery is vitarana, conscious and even breathing. We've come up against that once already in this tradition. So basically, the balancing of the breath is how we talked it. And that's, for instance, you were given a mantra, but you weren't told how to even your breath out. So you're trying to do the mantra and you're breathing unevenly. It's kind of contradictory to the whole point, you see, balance. The mantra isn't going to by itself usually cause you to even out your breath. There has to be a certain amount of willingness on your part to do so. So you're going to have to sit and practice. And even without fingers or nostrils or anything, just breathe in through your nose deeply, hold, and breathe out. You know, it can be all of 6 or 8 seconds. That's a beginning level of pranayama. And you just breathe that way for a while until you feel your heart stop beating so fast, until you feel your mind stop being restless, because restless mind is invading you. Also, it will help you get out of mudha mind, this breathing. You'll feel depressed, but you put your mind on just a breath or three portions of the breath, all of a sudden you're free of depression or lethargy, and you're also free of restlessness. It's beautiful. It's like, how can we say it? It's don't take intoxicants, you know, don't get into drugs or anything like that. There's one substance that you're allowed to take in. It's called oxygen. And it connects with prana. And that prana connects with psychic prana. And that psychic prana connects with Shakti. Just like that. So breathe. There's not a lot of credence giving to Hatha Yoga and practices and all that in Patanjali's yoga. Maybe 1 or 2 slokas mention it. Just get in. Shankaracharya says just one position will do it if you can master it, because you want to get the mind meditating. But there is credence given to pranayama, done in the right way, with the right teachings, and connecting it to the 3 phases of the word, for instance, AUM, in breath, held breath, out breath. I've taught it for a long time. Take up the footfalls, look under the 5 or 6 charts on prana that are in there with my commentaries. You'll understand your own breathing process better. So this is actually a method, one of the 7 methods that Patanjali gives out. And look at how they really are very much for the ordinary mind, leaning towards original mind. Then he wants you to get a little more active in the 3rd, Vishayavati Pravritti. Vishaya means senses. Whenever you see the Vishaya, the word in Sanskrit, usually means senses, and it means there's a problem with them too. So you want to contemplate objects. Vedavyas comments on that. Oh, I didn't read the commentary on conscious breathing by Vedavyas. Let's go back. As an aid for establishing greater stability of the mind, the practice of the expansion of the breath and the prana is duly recommended and utilized. So Father Vedanta also, like I said, giving credence and support for that conscious and even breathing. Then let's read the commentary of Vedavyas on contemplating objects. By focusing on the nostrils, tip of the tongue, palate, middle of the tongue, root of the tongue, perception of subtle nature of smell, taste, form, touch, and sound occurs. Celestial bodies and objects are also known by this special concentration. Via this method of direct experience, doubt is dispelled. The teachings of the seers and acharyas get accepted, and a gateway to wisdom and samadhi opens. So contemplating objects is a very powerful teaching by the father of yoga. You know what they're called in yoga, alambanas. I've taught that word in SRV for over 30 years. It's that just not objects, you need to not just look at them objects that are full of particles. That's one way to go. But you don't want to look at objects just as, oh, I need to detach from them, then I'll get enlightened, because that's not going to happen. It's going to help, maybe. You need to look at the object as a manifestation of Brahman. you need to deify it. Not condemn it. See, my teacher used to say, Tantra, the tantric way is deification, not condemnation. Renunciation, the way you renounce a thing is deification. When you put it in its place, you'll see that it has it's a part of the divine store of your own wisdom. You put it in that place and you're fine with it. You neither renounce it or accept it, as we're talking about here in this non-dual way. So you can see how Vedavyas really comes forward straight and hard on this. Not only just concentrating on the body will awaken the prana, but then all of a sudden concentrating on your mind will awaken celestial bodies, visions they're called. And because of this, doubt will disappear. I mean, if you see something inside yourself that you never thought you'd see or never believed in before, that other people didn't tell you about and won't believe you when you tell them about your experience, when you see that, doubt has to disappear in you. It's a part of your own experience now, so nobody can tell you otherwise. Sri Ramakrishna was having visions like that all the time. Gods and goddesses without number. In the Ramakrishna Upanishad is a beautiful verse. Gods and goddesses without number revealed themselves in multitudes. So he's having, like, not just the God of water, fire, earth, and ether, and so forth, but all these inner divinities that are in the subtle body, the powers of the yogi. All of these are attached to beings. So words, mantras, deities. Remember, Holy Mother said, when Sri Ramakrishna was alive, he taught me all the mantras and how they connect to the deities. So, number 3. Number 4 is Vishoka Jyotishmata. There's that word Jyoti, which means light. And Vishoka means absence of grief. Shoka, so you want to have freedom of these misgivings and problems of life by meditating on the inner life. Practicing meditation in the heart lotus, Vedavyas says, the buddhi, the intelligence, reveals itself and appears clear and luminous, like a sun-filled sky. From the comprehension of this ocean of sorrowless light, calm and serene, springs the great realization, I am. Second time we've come across that teaching when we looked at it, the mantra chart. So again, you can see how these are kind of ordered, and they fit very well with our obsessed mind, ordinary mind, original mind, inward journey that we're trying to take here. So first you took people and society and all that, and you practiced the 4 refinements, and then conscious and even breathing became a part of your practice. Then you started contemplating objects as manifestations of Brahman to deify. And then you started meditating on the inner light. You could see it now because all of these other things were put in their place, put to rest. Then comes 5, Vitaraga Vishaya Chitta. There's Vishaya again. So we're talking about back to some level of senses. So it's contemplating the divine beings. That would naturally take place if the celestial beings begin to make their way to you in your own consciousness. Vedavyas says, by contemplating and reflecting the mind fields of perfected sages and seers who have transcended all attraction for the sense objects, the yogic practitioner gets free of attraction and attachment and gains the state of stability. So there you are. You're definitely beyond the 3 states of mind, aren't you? And in our way of teaching in these 3 Sundays, you're also getting beyond the ordinary mind, back towards the original mind. You would think then maybe, and some people could think this way, when I meditated on the light, I saw it and that was it. I was enlightened. but then where are there still divine beings to see? So as I come back in and out, whether it be in waking, dreaming, deep sleep, turiya, and back to waking, or whether it be from birth, life, death, back to rebirth, whichever way I'm coming and going, whenever I'm doing that, and however I'm doing it, and how I'm managing it, that these divine beings are always there. And they point out the light to me, and they are the light to me. So pretty soon you begin to lose this distinction between the duality of form and formlessness, just like you did between sat and asat. That is number 5. As we reach our last few minutes here, we have number 6. And I just mentioned them, actually. Swapna nidra jnana alambanam. So there's the word alambana. What does it mean again? The object that you contemplate as a manifestation of Brahman. And swapna means, of course, your dream state. And nidra means, of course, the absence of waking and dreaming in this case. And jnana means your own wisdom. So it's really recalling dream experiences, and in a very profound way, not just, oh, I remember a dream I had, and now I forgot it a week later. But basically, you're keeping track of your dreams as if you wrote a journal through your life. People write journals, oh, I did this today, and oh, I remember this, and so forth. People pick up their journals later and saw what kind of silly things they did all their life. But this person is like keeping track of every dream they had, especially the ones that were done after he started mantra practice, after he started mastering his states of mind, and after she started practicing these methods of mastery of their own awareness. Those dreams become very important to recall later. Vedavyas says about that, the yogi also attains the state of stability of mind when he contemplates in profound meditation the states of dreaming and deep sleep. So see me about that if you're interested. And you can write to me, and on email. You can also get a hold of us through our websites. Number 7 here is abhimatajan, meditating on the chosen ideal. So this really brings us back full circle to here, doesn't it? Because when you get a mantra, you're given its association with the chosen ideal. That's why I mentioned Holy Mother saying, when Sri Ramakrishna was alive, he gave me all the mantras for all the deities and how they connect to them. So this is what a great soul would know about after having meditated on their chosen ideal until they met them face to face and merged with them. So meditating on a chosen ideal, it's called an ishtam, and you're supposed to do it with ishtanishta, one-pointed devotion. For how long? As we used to say, for a long, long, long time, until finally time disappears and that thou art. Vedavyasa's commentary, overall, the yogi may allow the mind to meditate upon whatever is most pleasing and beneficial. For through this method, as well as the mind, also becomes stable and enters samadhi. So the mind becomes free. This is where Sri Ramakrishna is saying that the mind becomes its own guide, its own guru. That's where that happens. Probably not before that very much, as Guru Tattva begins to introduce itself to the awakening soul and to the enlightened soul, to the illumined soul, and then becomes this beautiful ability to see the inner worlds, to connect to the inner deities, and to meet with your Ishtam in darshan, in deep communion. Let's end then with Lord Patanjali's own quote, since we've taken all of Vedavyasa's quotes on these. He says, to overcome the impediments to yoga and other distractions, recourse to the one-pointed practice of a single method is enjoined. As concentration occurs, knowledge of all things from gross to subtle is gained, and samapatti, mastery over the mind fields, is attained. What more to say, and how better to say it than to think about this journey we've just taken on the second Sunday of this three-part class, from obsessed mind to ordinary mind to original mind. We've had a lot of positive teachings here. Next week, I'll tell you about some of the concomitants of weakness of mind that come forward, that keep people from seeing and hearing the great merit of practice like this and undertaking it for any given length of time. That's what we'll do next week, and also look at the final condition of illumined mind according to Advaita Vedanta. So here, let's end then with a chant. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Gyanamurtin Dandvaititang Gagana Sadrisham Tatmana Shadi Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimala Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitram Triguna Rahitam Sadgurum Tan Namavi. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. We salute the leader of our souls, through whose grace our ignorance is dispelled, who is beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, and all other pairs of opposites. We recognize that one as the only witness to the changing phenomena of this universe. May we, through that grace, go beyond darkness and delusion and realize the truth in this very life. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.